Welcome to Agile to Agility podcast with Bryans.
Major show alert!
The very first value we wrote is individuals and interactions.
Let's take this another level.
Let's get started with the panel discussion. We have 60 minutes. We have Bryan Finster, Al Shalloway, and Michael Küsters. So Andrew, I don't know if you want to start with the first question or to kick us off. Or
Yeah, I'll jump in. I was going back and forth on whether or not I should start out with kind of a fun, humorous question or dig right into some thought-provoking stuff. So I think I'll start with a fun one, if that's all right with everybody. We're going to play a quick little game. I'm going to give you 3 choices, and you're going to have to choose. Would you date, marry, or make disappear? The 3 choices. You have to apply one of those to each of the choices. So the 3 choices are the Scaled Agile DevOps Framework from Bryan, the Scream Framework.
That's the Scaled Agile DevOps Maturity Framework.
Maturity Framework, sorry.
The M is very important.
Very, very important, yeah. The Scream Framework from Michael, or the Scaled Agile Framework that we're all very familiar with. So you have to choose. You're going to date, marry, or make disappear. Those 3 things. Bryan, you want to start us off?
Yeah, so I would make SAFe disappear. I'd replace it with SADMF because SADMF provides all of the expected outcomes of SAFe at a much lower price point. And I haven't had a chance to dig into Scream to find out if SADMF would crush it or not.
But you, Al? You're currently muted. I see your lips moving, but no audio.
There we go. Yeah, thank you. The only one I know is SAFe, and since I could replace it with a variety of things, I think the Discipline Agile Value Stream Consultant workshop I created would replace it well. But if it was just that particular one, I would say probably date, because there's a lot of horrible stuff in it, but there's a lot of good stuff in it. And I think what you want to do is recognize the good and then throw out the bad and change it. I'm not saying do SAFe. I'm not a fan. That's why I left. But there are things it brings to awareness that others don't, except for those other 2 you mentioned, which I don't know, and the DAVSC. So that's kind of not quite throw it away, kind of date. Maybe be in the social sphere, but not quite date is the other option.
All right. And what about you, Michael?
Okay, so I have my own opinion on Scream. It's everywhere anyway. So I'm a lot with Al here. There are a lot of useful concepts, because you can't really say that the ideas behind SAFe, they are bad, because SAFe takes everything from around the world that they have observed to be a pretty good idea, and they've condensed it into one framework. Whether that is such a good idea is a different question. But getting into the different topics, like Al said, date SAFe and see what we can pick up that we like, that makes sense in our concept. Starting the right conversations is a pretty good thing to do. Adopting it is a whole different ballgame.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for that. We'll jump into some more thought-provoking stuff now. So on one of Helen's slides, there was an interesting statistic that by 2023, 70% of organizations are going to be leveraging value stream management. So value stream management isn't a new thing. It's been around, since the early 1900s. So why do you believe it's become such a hot topic as of late? Let's start with Michael this time.
I guess the issue is that work is becoming more and more complex as we are integrating more and more things into an enterprise to get things done. I mean, maybe in the early 1900s, you had a process with maybe 10 20 steps. In a factory line, you could look at what the machines were doing one by one. It was easy, but now things are very intermingled, very complex, very distant, very distributed. Sometimes when we're looking at the value stream, we are not talking about things happening in a department. We are talking about things happening across multiple companies scattered throughout the globe. And then it becomes pretty hard to understand what is going on.
Al, you want to jump in there?
Yeah, I have two things. If you look at the movement from Agile to, from Waterfall to Agile, you see, of course, smaller batches, you see more team-centric, even SAFe, although it's the big organization, still comes from the essential SAFe level, the teams, and builds it up. You have the conversation, do we do bottom up, do we do top down? Notice that there's a common theme in bottom up and top down, and that is hierarchy of management. Even in Agile, in some ways, the scaling Agile is take your teams and you're still talk about the hierarchy and leadership. I think that hierarchies are not the way to manage organizations, but value stream networks and how the customer value streams, the development value streams, operational and business enabling value streams interact with each other. So I think the shift from Waterfall to Agile, the next step is Agile to value stream management. And when you think about it, it puts your hands on the steering wheel because it's from, I got an idea till it gets consumed and I want to squeeze the time. It's a direct view of what we're trying to accomplish. And Scrum, SAFe, less, none of these look at it that way. Again, I'm not trying to promote DA, but DA does in my own approach, Ampli does. And there are a lot of other places that do, but they're not popular. I think a lot of the places that are focusing on value streams, like I know, Bryan and Michael does, that these things, we need to create awareness that this is a direct hands-on, but we need to create where people can go to workshops that do it, not just have a method, that's kind of theoretical in an article. Like Steve Tendon has some really good stuff, but he doesn't have a workshop, so it's hard to learn except through reading.
Maybe just to follow up on this and just to build on it, like who should be responsible for architecting and maintaining value stream networks in organization? Because I think when I look at it, it's one of the biggest issues because the wrong people are talking about this stuff. It's not the right people. So from your perspective, maybe this time we can start with Bryan or Al, you can continue. I guess there's no strong preference, but it seems like the right people are not architecting and maintaining or talking about the value stream. Do you see that, or what are your thoughts on that specific topic?
Yeah, I'll be real fast. Yeah, I do. I think it's a new role. I think you need kind of a value stream manager who oversees it. Not manager is the wrong word, but somebody who oversees it. And right now, you rarely see a role like that. And I think that's an important role.
Do you think it's a role, or do you think it should be, I guess, responsibility that's spread across? Like, do you see it's a single person or?
Well, maybe not a person, but I do see somebody has the responsibility. I'd be curious what Bryan and Michael think about that. But if you don't have somebody have responsibility, it gets lost in the committee.
Yeah.
So I have a vested interest. I'm a value stream architect. So, having that view of, yeah, but, actually, that came from going and hearing Dominica DeGrandis talk about new roles in value stream management and looking at the role of value stream architect and going, oh yeah, well that's what me and my team do every single day. So cool. Now I'm a value stream architect. Now I think that you can't just kind of hope it into place, right? I mean, you have to have somebody who's actually looking at the details of why we can't deliver. I'm sorry, I've got some construction going on. Looking at the details of why you can't deliver and finding where the constraints are and finding where we can remove waste and looking, both the organizational architecture, application architecture down at the team level, how are the teams working, and be able to do that. It's a new role for sure, mostly, but I don't think you can do it just by saying, yeah, we're doing value stream management, but we're not going to staff any skill around that as something people are doing day to day.
Michael, what are your thoughts on this?
I think that there is a lot of confusion going on what actually a value stream is to begin with, and that is where we are getting into the mess that we see. In many organizations, value streams are still considered a local optimization. I mean, we might even see a delivery value stream. So we have one value stream that is taking care of customer-faced concerns. Then we are seeing another value stream, so-called, just taking features and turning them into working software. And of course, when you do those kind of things, then not only you're missing what the real value of the value stream is, because you're still doing local optimizations, you're not resolving the problems that the organization already got themselves into. So that is, like Bryan said, the problem when you don't really have the competence around value streams and you just think you're following a form and doing it.
Yeah, and Michael and I have talked about this. The fact that it's not just that small local optimizations. This is product development, right? I mean, the value streams are business value to people who pay us money so that we can be a business.
Yeah.
And it's not just a linear flow of, oh, we're going to deliver features. I mean, the goal is how do we improve the product we're delivering? And part of that value is because it's not a line, it's a circle, right? We need that feedback from the people we're delivering that value to give us information about how we can improve that value. And is that fixing some of the things internally? Is it coming up with better ideas? All of that plays into it, and you can't look at it as a technical problem or a business problem. It's a holistic problem of the entire organization, right? Where our entire purpose for living is to improve how we're delivering value, or our competitors will, and we won't be around.
I want to circle back quickly to something that Al said, which is how the industry kind of has gone through this evolution, right? We were a waterfall, we've kind of evolved into more an agile way of working, and now maybe we're evolving into value streams. And I've never really looked at it that way. I look at value stream management as an enabler for agility. Business agility is still the goal, and faster feedback loops, and value stream management is a tool that we can leverage to identify where those feedback loops are, how big they are, how long they are, and where we can optimize them. So, Al, can you speak to that? What you were talking about with the evolution into VSM?
Yeah, I will, and then I want to riff on something Bryan said that
Sure.
I like. So I actually, one of my favorite quotes is Edgar Schein's, "We don't talk and think about what we see what we were able to think and talk about." So when you look at the value stream, see, I don't view the value stream as a tool. I view it as the vision of what you should be looking at to add value. And like I say, there are many ways to break it down, but two of the important ways are the development value stream and the customer value stream. And I'm going to riff on what Bryan said with this. It answers both. If we're trying to be innovative for the customer, then we have to change the way the customer works. We have to make their life better. That means we have to change their value stream, the way they do their job. Now, we can't do that. You can't go to the customer and guide them and all that. But the customer interacts with the systems we're building or the services we're offering. That's called the customer journey. And we can imagine the way the customer value stream will be better, and then how we influence it by attending to our system affecting their customer journey. And like, I bought a refrigerator. This is the simplest example for my garage, just to have an extra storage, and it's got this door within a door. So I can put all the drinks in the door and just open a glass partition in the door so that it doesn't get warm in there, and it's easy to put all my drinks in there. Now, they've affected how I stock that refrigerator. They've affected how I store my drinks with this, and it's very inventive. It makes it easier for me. It makes me see what's in there, which is usually a big problem in my fridges, and it saves me electricity. So that's really, I mean, I like design thinking, but I'll tell you, I think I do a lot of things that are kind of like design thinking by imagining how would a customer like things to be, and then seeing how can I help them get what they want. So that's why I said riffs on what Bryan's talking about. And the architecture part, I love your title, by the way, Bryan, because it is not just how do I do my dev, it's how does the development group, the customers, the business, and the sport, how they all align with each other. And that's a complicated problem.
I would say in this context that we really need to differentiate what we're talking about, because when we are delivering software to real customers, that is a totally different way of saying we are producing software that supports our own business. So internal software development that is supporting a customer value stream. So even when we look at a high level process, what's the customer's journey through our organization? It might be, of course, with marketing, we're trying to reach out to them, we try to sell them something, and then we're going to fulfill something. And if that something that we are fulfilling is the software we are delivering, we're on a whole new different way of working than if, say, we are just producing that little bit of software that, for example, optimizes the fulfillment process for a physical good that our customer is buying, and we have a whole different customer experience. And even who do we consider as the consumer of what we are developing? We have to ask different questions, but we have to ask all the questions. Because in IT, I see we're very often content with saying we're delivering to our customer. And if we are in the context of in-house development, then our customer is usually department X or department Y, but the problem is they are not the real customer, and we might even be making things easier for them at the expense of the people whom the company is selling to. So we have to see the different levels of the value streams that we might be talking about and have to align them.
Yeah, Michael, I want to riff on that because we talk about customers, but there are really stakeholders that aren't the customer, but are, I mean, I know this is what you're saying. And one of the things I like about that, when you think about what you just said, that there are other people involved beside the customer and there are stakeholders. The nice thing about value streams, they can connect stakeholders all the way through our product management, all the way into development, all the way out to support and the customers. And you don't see that in today's agile methods, not the popular ones anyway. I mean, there are pieces of it in SAFe, not done well, but they're not connected because seeing the value stream in SAFe is almost impossible. And also it's defined wrong besides. So don't get me on that one, though. I just brought it up. So the thing about value streams is they're a way of talking about, and Helen mentioned this, systems are really about the relationships between the components more than the components itself. And value streams and networks lay out all these and actually identify what those relationships are. So it gives us a different way to look at these things. And when you look at hierarchies, you can't make hierarchies better because you're still focusing on the people in the hierarchy. You're still focusing on optimizing those people, and value stream cuts across the organization. So we have new eyes now. I'm going to bastardize this quote, but it's one of my favorite from Arthur Schopenhauer. He says, the task is not to see new things, but to see what everybody sees in a different, but to think about what everybody sees in a way nobody's thought of before. And I think value streams enable us to think in a way that now we can see these relationships running across instead of focusing on trying to make the silos better. We don't want to make the silos better. We want to get rid of them.
So maybe just to come back to what Bryan said a couple of weeks ago when I posted on LinkedIn, if people had any questions for this specific session, and Bryan said nothing changes if there's no push from the top for change. I think that's something that not many people here will disagree. A lot of times you have people that know more than their managers or their executives in the company. So what do we do with this? I think this is probably one of the biggest challenges that everybody faces, is like, okay, I understand it, but if there's no change or if there's no push, if essentially from the board to the president to the COO, if there is no push at that level, a lot of this it becomes much harder. So do you agree, and what are your thoughts on how to address that?
Well, so I obviously agree because I wrote it, but the challenges to the challenges to that is how do you build the influence to help those people that don't see what you see, right? And how do you show them that the changes that you want to implement actually help whatever their personal goals are, right? And this is something that, you know, we ran into all the time in the Walmart Dojo, is going, you know, from director to director, how can what we're trying to show you to do, show your teams to do, how that improves your goals. And, you know, one of the experiences we had early on was we knew for a fact that continuous delivery was going to be an engine towards uncovering where we had pain and trying to make that pain go away. And so the director of platform had a lot of influence with the CTO, and then sure enough, the CTO puts out a thing where it's like, hey, we want every team to be able to go to production daily. Suddenly we got a lot of motion, right? But you're not gonna get that motion just by walking around and talking to your peers and saying, hey, we need to make things better, because they're influenced to work the way they're working now. And so you've got to have some way to get some influence as high up as you can go to change the environment. So the way we're working now, we're no longer successful working that way. We have to change how we work to be successful.
How do you bridge that? So I've heard you talk about the Walmart Dojo and communities of practice is a great model for, you know, that bottom up part of the transformation. So we've talked about the importance of the top down leadership, vision, buy-in. That what has been your experience, the three of you, on that grassroots side of the thing, bringing it up? What models have worked? I'd love to hear more about the Walmart Dojo or communities of practice and other areas that you guys have focused in.
Well, I've got some examples, but I'll go last.
Okay.
I'm sorry, Brian, were you going to mention those now, or were you going to give them later?
No, I was going to wait.
Okay.
Yeah.
Michael, I've been talking a lot, so do you want to jump in, or I've, of course, got something to say? You're not. Okay.
Yeah, so really, just to bring back, what is the grassroots? How do we grow the competencies, grow the skills, grow the knowledge to meet that vision that our CTO or leaders are casting?
Well, when you say grassroots, that kind of implies to me more to the worker bees, and I'm not sure that's how you do it. I think the way you get leadership involved, and in fact, I wrote an article and posted on that page that you can get to, and it's in the chat, why leaders should look at value streams. You need to talk to them from their perspective. And their perspective, how do I get the right value to the right customers as quickly as possible? And when you talk to them about Agile, what's that? What's lean? I thought I'm not making cars. You know, so that's the wrong conversation to talk about Agile and lean to executives. I mean, Agile is getting a bad name for a lot of reasons. And the same with SAFE. You don't want to talk about that. You want to talk about how do you get the right values to the right customers. And I saw somebody said SAFE leads the latest. No, it doesn't. It misses the minimum business increment concept, or the minimum marketable feature, except that they bastardize it. There's a lot of good stuff that's not in SAFE, because this is the problem with solutions as do this, is a lot of people have better ideas. The move and TameFlow is the other comparable thing. So my view is you have to talk to the different levels about what they're interested in, but you have to talk to them in a way that aligns everybody. There are 4 levels of things that I've seen. The first is visibility. You got to make everything visible. And this is something value stream management does, because you can see the work, you can see the workflow. Some people believe in coordinating. That takes a lot of work. That's like herding cats. Okay, I got cats, believe me, I know this one. Or you can plan. Well, plans are even harder sometimes, but plan gets you online. What you really want is alignment. Value streams give you the opportunity to align. I think part of the value stream architecture, and Brian, I know you know this, but I'm just going to say it. Part of it is, how do you set it up so people can see what's in it for them across the organization based on the value that's coming into the value stream? That's not an easy thing to do. People talk about in Agile about simple. Well, it's simple when you're in it. It's not simple to design it. In other words, I bet, Brian, you work your ass off on how to do the architecture to make it easy for other people. There's this distinction between what's easy for the person setting it up versus what's easy for the people in the system. So
well, not
I would
only
say
that, but getting people to actually listen. I think the people is actually the hardest part.
Well, if you give them this huge amount of work they have to do, they're not going to listen very well. You know, so that's the question. How do you get this alignment? How can value streams be an aligning force? I believe they're the best aligning force we know now. Now, 5 years from now, who knows? I've been called a serial adopter, but I take that as a badge of goodness. I learn something new, I move on to it. I don't get attached to anything, but I've been using value streams for like 15 years. And I'll tell you, they enabled.
Yeah. Have you seen it like without board support and like president or CEO support?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's another thing that I've been wanting to talk about a little bit. Maybe this is the way where to do it. So I love board support. I love the tool support that's there. But value stream management to me has three things in general. One is, and I talked to Karen about this, and I really got to acknowledge she opened my eyes. It's a great collaborative tool so people can get on the same page. It's like planning. The plan is useless, but planning is everything, and it's like value stream management's a great collaborative thing. My experience with big organizations, and kudos to her to get people to sign up and spend days doing it. I could never do that when it was really large organizations. So what I've done is I sometimes go out and map out on a big whiteboard all the things that should be done from a conceptual or idealized approach. And then you could lay out your problems, and it's like a Pareto analysis in a matter of hours. You get people, oh yeah, we don't have priorities. How does not getting our priorities aligned to stakeholders? How does that affect our development? So it's not really mapping, but it shows the relationships between the pieces. And that's really good. And you don't need a tool for that.
No,
Now, if you have a tool, that's good.
What I was asking is like executives or the board, the board itself in a company, the board of directors.
The board.
So like, without their support, without them aligning, without, like I haven't seen it work in a sense if you don't have that.
So they don't have to align on value streams. What they have to align on is we want more company value.
That's right.
Exactly.
Right. Yeah. And so you talk to them about that. And Al, just to riff on what you're saying, yeah, you have to be able to talk to, specifically to people about what they need, talking to the CTO about we're able to deliver better to the business, and then being able to talk at the team level and say, hey, this is how, if we change how we work right here, that's going to make your life better as a developer. You're going to spend less time up at 3:00 in the morning. You're not going to be working weekends, right? And being able to talk back and forth. The original question, we're going back to how to get alignment that we want to work this way from the top down and bottom up. Number one, you have to get people at both levels believing it's true. Getting people over the hump that if we change how we work to a way that is more disciplined, with higher levels of quality, that we don't have to stay awake all night long. And showing them that you can have a much higher morale team just by changing some things around, continuous integration is a good start. They see that benefit, and then getting the top to see that benefit as well. And then on top of that, getting the top to interact with the people doing the work to show that they're not just giving vocal support, they're giving material support to making change happen. That they're not just saying, go do a thing, they're part of the thing and cheerleaders for it continuing. And if you lack that sort of actual caring about the organization coming from the top, the bottom doesn't care either.
I would say on this one here is you always need to see the context in which we're operating. I'm not sure what everybody else's context is, but usually when I come in, there is a problem to solve, a real problem to solve. Maybe we don't know what this problem is because, why does an organization say we want to move to Agile? They wouldn't want to make a change if things were going well. They wouldn't want to introduce a framework, a method, or technique if everything was fine. Value stream mapping as an exercise is just to try to pinpoint what is the playing field we're talking about. If the playing field of our problem is local, we do not need senior leadership. We can optimize within the field that is given to us. Usually during value stream mapping, it becomes obvious that the organizational system was designed in a way to not be able to perform optimally. And then, of course, we cannot implement a local solution. But like Al already mentioned, we need to talk to people in their language. When I am approaching senior leadership, I'm not talking about Scrum, I'm not talking about SAFe, I'm not talking about Agile, I'm not talking about DevOps. What I'm talking about, you're losing $500,000 here every single month. You want to look into this one. And I'm not even telling them I would like to implement this or that method here. I am saying we need this support to make the million stopping from being lost. And that's how you get their support.
So talk to their problems. Yeah, I mean, I think, obviously that's definitely a great starting point, but it's just like all of that becomes pointless if you're talking to the, VP level and down below if there's no support, which goes back to what Bryan said. But maybe to switch it up a little bit, let's take a look at some of these questions that participants here posted. So from Rick here, can you share some examples of how you've successfully shipped an organization ingrained output delivery view towards customer value and outcomes? From value streams to optimize delivery of output, example like features, to more effectively delivering measurable customer outcomes, customer value. So who would like to maybe share some examples on this for Rick?
I can't, I'm just pausing because I feel like I'm talking too much. But if they're not gonna go, I can.
That's okay, go Al, and then.
Okay,
I couldn't find my mute button.
I think the core of this is based on Mick Kirsten's project to product. People have to, in product management, people have to start looking at what are the products, what are the values we're giving to customers. And then in doing that, you have to create the notion of what's the next releasable thing I can do that's small, like Steve Tenden's move or our minimum business increment. And when you have that, you now don't focus on stories, you don't focus on features, you still focus on what's the business value for this chunk of work. And you could talk about it in 3 levels. This is what we're going to build and why it's part of the strategy we have, part of this initiative. The development group can take a look and see what it takes to do it. And it gives you a way to align across the entire organization. So one way of doing that, I remember an organization, they were about 300, it was a huge organization, but it was about a 300-person group we went in. And basically we taught them this concept of what you want to do is focus on this artifact we call the minimum business increment that is the next thing you're going to release. Now, what it does to find the next thing, you've got to focus on who's my market, which customers are more important. You do a basically like a weighted shortest job first or cost to delay aspect of it. And what happened is, so we just went in there for like a 2 or 3 day development training, but I got to be friends with a guy who brought us in, and he told me about 6 months, a year later, he transformed the entire group because what he did was he said, look, here's this agreement, because this was another thing we suggested. You agree to work on the most important thing for the organization. That means you have to know what the most important thing for the organization is. So by making that agreement, all of a sudden you got it down. Do you know what the most important? Are you going to work on it? And the most important things were designed up front from product management to be oriented around value to the customer. And he shifted that one question. He shifted his entire group of about 300 people with it. But and that was kind of leader because he was not the CIO, but he was in charge of product. You need something to align around.
Yeah, we had something similar. So in the role I had before I moved to platform at Walmart was I was in logistics, and the SVP of logistics wanted to. He said we're no longer doing projects. We're going to do product development, and then gave all of us senior engineers this challenge of how do we stop doing quarterly releases and start doing biweekly releases. And so we re-architected the entire area. We re-architected the team. I mean, we decomposed the warehouse management system into the business capabilities, architected teams around that with the goal that they were independently deliverable from each other. Told leadership, okay, this is how we need to align the teams to get this done, and this is the application architecture we need to get this done. We brought in business product owners to join the team as team members who were responsible for making sure that we had the right value going out to the distribution centers. And then we drove ahead. It was really successful. The stories, and I know I'm going to bash on SAFe a little bit. We recovered from a SAFe implementation by throwing away all of that and just aligning those product teams around the business goals that they were individually responsible for. And then when there was touch points, having those teams talk to each other when they needed to collaborate. And it worked remarkably well. And this was a small portion, probably 400 or 500 developers in one small area of Walmart, but it was very successful.
Bryan, I want to riff on that or ask you a question because there's a very really cool question that we kind of create the stage to ask executives. That's been very powerful, and I suspect you've done it, but it sounds like you've set it up anyway. So when we get executives to understand the priority, not the priority, because I prefer to think of it as the sequence, like this is the most important, it's going to take this capability and all that. Then they start going after utilization and clogging things up, which, you know, we know is bad, but a lot of people think otherwise. But the question that seems to work when we set it up to ask is, why would you slow down something that's more important by doing something that's less important just to utilize people? Have you seen that? Have you been able to set? I mean, I imagine you have. I'm wondering how you set that up, because that's what it sounded like you were doing there, whether you asked the question or not.
Yeah, I mean, we were lucky enough to have a VP who understood that people aren't robots, and then also that if you just flood a robot with work, it slows down, right? And so in that case, we didn't have to do a lot of adjusting of his attitude. He had the correct attitude. I have frequently had conversations later on when, you know, I was leading the dojo with senior directors who are like, I want to be 100% utilized. And then it's that, okay, well, let's talk about what that looks like and, you know, do things to try to educate them.
Yeah.
I think that the conversation about flow efficiency versus resource efficiency is a never-ending debate, and to see which one should have priority is very difficult. The conversation that I like to have about on this one is really, that is where flow analysis becomes very important. When you say how long does it take to move from need to satisfaction, and if we can reduce this time, we are increasing the rate at which our company is earning money without spending a single extra cent. This concept is also part of Steve Tennant's pain flow. If we can just reduce our wait time in our process without even adding more workers to the process or anything, we are earning more money with very simple change. And if you can make this visible in the value stream and quantify it, the numbers become staggeringly high, because if you're developing in a large program things with 300-400 people, and the program's costs are already in the millions every month, and you're assuming that you're producing a positive business case, otherwise you wouldn't be doing it, then the cost of delay very quickly becomes a few millions, and we can say that everybody is busy, everybody's utilized, but the work isn't flowing. We're not generating business value flow. We are just keeping the organization utilized. And when we can make this visible, we can initiate change.
I'm sorry, Brian, you go.
There was a staggering statistic I saw somewhere recently, which is the average flow efficiency or average activity ratio with IT organizations is somewhere between 7 and 15%, right? And so
sounds about right.
We're looking at trying to optimize that 5 to 17 or 5 to 15%, where the massive gains is really in tapping into the wait times, the inactive time, and removing those. The opportunities for improvement are staggering, to your point, Michael.
Well, and there's a big problem happening in the industry right now where a lot of tool vendors are out there publishing delivery metrics dashboards. My favorites are the ones that use Git activity to define productivity. I rail at those people any chance I can get, because how much of product development is typing, right? How much of it is us talking to each other about what we should actually be typing? And, if you look at a value stream map of just a team, and you see how much time is spent typically to ship something, it's a very small portion of that's actually typing. But this push for, we want to maximize utilization of the typing, and people are selling tools to do this, and I wonder where their ethics are, because they're software development houses too. Do they not even understand software development, the thing that they're trying to sell tools to measure?
That's more likely. That's more likely.
But the fact that they're selling tools to do this drives that narrative that hurts everybody, including the bottom line.
Well, that goes back to the question that I had about, like, is this role? Because, like, I don't know, it's I don't know exactly which book. I think it was one by Taichi Ono, or maybe it was one of the lean books that like they said essentially like until like 15 or 20% of people in the organization understand these concepts, like it's very difficult. And that's why I feel like it's almost like I use the analogy, and others have used the same analogy of cooks, right, and chefs. It's like almost like it's not just an architect. It's like it's decent amount of people in the organization need to understand. And it's almost like I spoke with Dave Snowden maybe a couple of months ago, and he was describing it as a network of people, sense making, like network, where you have like people that are trying to make sense if this is working, and how do we need to, but they're aligned. Like imagine like group of us looking at the organization and being the organization and constantly inspecting what's going on. And I think that's more likely to work. It's probably more difficult to create an organization. And when I think about if that's really what's required, that's a huge step. How do you train? How do you develop people that can actually understand this stuff and adjust? It's almost like if we're thrown and given a bunch of ingredients, and those ingredients keep changing all the time, how do you get people to actually create something that's not poisoning people and create something delicious, versus like following recipes like what we've done with frameworks? So I don't know if you have any thoughts on that, and maybe we can move on to the next topic. But
yeah, I've got a leading question here. So we're talking about with value stream management, value streams, making the invisible visible, and leveraging data to make decisions with. So how do the three of you, as you enter into an engagement with the team or an organization, where do you start from unlocking the data? Do you start qualitatively just through conversations, or do you try to tap into tool sets? Where do you start gathering that data to show flow efficiencies and lead times and things like that?
So I start tapping into the actual data and also not trusting any of it at all. Most of the data that you find early on is going to be from a workflow tool, and unless the team already cares and understands how that tool helps them, the data quality is garbage, right? But you have to go to the Gemba. Even if you have everything fully instrumented, even if you don't think the data quality is garbage, all that data will tell you is when things are going wrong, not that things are going correctly. And so you still have to go and talk to the team and find out how things are going, how the team's feeling, and how the team is working, right? And then educate them on why this data is important to them. I mean, one of the things I always tell teams is like, hey, this workflow data here, you'd have no leg to stand on to say no if you don't have data to say no because math. Here's math. I can't take any more work, right? And so it's important to get them to understand that. But you start with the people. You start with them understanding what it is we're trying to get done. You don't just throw dashboards at them and say good luck.
Yeah.
so
I think
here, let's just maybe do a quick check-in. We have about 16 minutes left. This is a question that Rick asked. So Rick has his hands up. So Michael, you go next, and then we'll see what question Rick has, and then maybe we can move on to the next question given the time.
Yeah, so real quick, like Bryan said, what our tools show to us in the beginning is really worthless, because we wouldn't have the problem if we had the eyes to see where the problems are. But still, when we talk to people, everybody knows what the problem is. Somehow they may just not be able to express it. So getting this tacit knowledge that is already out there in the organization, visualized, centralized, and then turn into action. Data comes as a second step after the obvious thing is really made visible.
Great. Rick, do you have a follow-up question or?
Yeah, I think so. I guess that's probably a good. It's the visibility aspect that maybe is a good way to address it, and is really it's the visibility on outcomes versus outputs that I find challenging with organizations. And like a lot of we talk about, it's so easy because by default with technology and stuff that our mindset, to use the word mindset, we're so output focused that it's easy the moment we start the conversation we start measuring, we immediately measure outputs, and everything is even, some of the people talked about like the minimal business increment or aligning on business goals, right? But those, most of the times, immediately from the moment they're talked about and written down, focus on outcome. This business goal is we're going to do this thing, and we're going to produce this thing, and we're going to release this thing, right? But that's an output. The question is, how do we get people to shift and to like really focus on the customer need, that realization aspect, and have those things really anchored by the visibility of customer outcomes. And I guess maybe the easiest example I'll give is, everyone talks about the Toyota production system, right? And they really valued their value stream mapping, all this stuff came from Toyota production system, right? But they managed to optimize their production system, but then they realized that they could release from the time an order came in, they could have a car out in days, custom ordered, right? But beyond that, they couldn't ship it to the customer. The customer took months before, because they didn't optimize the customer sale and delivery process until they later on hit crisis point and merged those, because they had never focused, they had focused on factory outputs, and not on actually delivering the customer need of, I will order this custom car, I want it to show up. So that's kind of my question around, so anchoring those business increment, the business goals, everything. How do we get that conversation where we link the visibility of outcomes?
I want to answer that. I had something else I wanted to talk about with the visibility and problems, but I think I suspect you filtered what I meant by the minimum business increment. Yes, it is and I didn't say it completely, so this is on me, but the minimum business increment is the next thing we're going to deliver, but it's kind of a container for what is the outcome, who's the customer, why are we doing this, how does it tie back to the values of the stakeholders that we're doing, who's required to do this. So it's a holistic total value stream container of that. And that's one of the ways you get in that direction, is you don't say, here's a feature. See, there is none of the things you talked about are in features or stories. And yet we tend to take these little pieces and glom them together to get an output, instead of starting with what's the outcome and then pulling these little things underneath it. This is not a waterfall approach. You don't break everything down. You get this context, and then that gives you a context to work within. So that's what we mean by a move in TameFlow or MBI. And a quick riff on both what Michael said, and I think Bryan said it too. See, I actually believe you can see cause and effect in complex systems, mostly. And when you don't, you can learn what's something you didn't see. Complex systems and knowledge work, what happens is the complexity obscures things. So if you can get quick feedback, you can unobscure it. One of the reasons I do value stream, the idealized value stream at the beginning, where I lay out the general workflow and what the problems are. People know what their problems are, but they have no way to connect it to the real cause. I'll put somewhere on that mural board where we basically, I was helping a group of, they had 100 devs, and they couldn't figure out where their problem was because they were so sure where it was, but it was in the wrong place. And literally, when we did a value stream map and they saw where it really was, in an hour, they increased the productivity of 100 people, 20%, because it wasn't the people who were the problem, it was something else was the problem. So this cause and effect, a lot of people in the Agile space think you cannot make cause and effect. But to me, it's like you're driving backwards on the wrong side of the road, complaining how tough driving is. We do more wrong, more damage, more waste by not doing things that are very clear we should be doing. And we just need a way to capture the complexity that's obscuring and be able to pivot to it. Okay, that's it. I covered both my points. Michael, you might as well follow up.
Yeah, just it's the same thing somehow when you say, Al, we always need to have the whole value stream in view, because otherwise we very quickly get into this kind of a feature factory model, and the problems we are solving are not the real problem. We have to lose the idea of this feature factory. It's still in many organizations that it basically starts at the point the demand is formalized, and it ends when the demand is implemented. But that is not what we're talking about when we're talking about the value stream. We have to start earlier and later in the chain.
Yeah, the thing I keep reminding people is that, we're trying to improve our value stream so that we can get between idea and feedback more rapidly. Because the truth of the matter is that this idea we have is most likely wrong. The request we have from the customer is most likely the wrong problem to solve. That delivery and output is useless if it's the wrong solution. And since we're probably wrong, we should really be focusing on how fast we can get feedback at every step of the way to become less wrong. That's the whole point. That we're doing product development. This is not an assembly line. Product development is, let's see if this solves the problem or not.
Yeah.
Okay. We have about 10 more minutes left. Let's maybe answer, we'll go to this one, and then I have maybe one more. So how do we prevent value streams from becoming the new silos?
How much cross-dependency is there between value streams? So I think it really depends. I mean, if you're coming from something like Walmart where you have multiple product lines, there's some touch points for something like, store systems and warehouse systems, but not very many. And so those are relatively isolated value streams in a lot of cases. Are the value streams not very well isolated? Then why are they two value streams? Why isn't it one value stream? How do we architect to optimize for communication on that product line?
This reminds me of a question I've had in some organizations. Oh, how will we scale it? And then they can't even sell 10 of them. It's like if value streams became independent so they could become silos, that would be such a massive step forward. That would solve the big problem. Now, I agree, we don't want them to be silos. But the reason we don't want them to be silos is because you're losing opportunities for education. It's a different issue. So you want them to operate autonomously for getting the outcomes based on the stakeholder values. And you'd want them not to be silos because they're not interacting with each other by definition in building what they're building, but you lose education when they become silos if they don't talk to each other. So we got to recognize these are two different issues. And education is something you can readily set time for, but you have to acknowledge that, well, it takes some time to cross-educate. One way we do it in one of our we call it the Value Stream Management Masterclass. We've come, and actually it's in the DAVSC as well. We have challenge boards where we bring different people from different parts of the organization together, working in a kind of collaborative method so you can see what's going on with the other team. So you have your area, but imagine they've got this other area. When I run exercises, one of the days we used to be co-located in the exercises, people would cheat by looking at the other people's tables. And I would say, go for it, learn from them. So some of this is a collaboration. It's simply a community of practice to cross-educate. You don't have to worry about it as a silo that they're working independently. You need to make them learn together. Working independently is fine.
Yeah, and we did something similar. It's kind of semi-informal. We built a really large user community just focused on how do we do continuous delivery better. Yeah. And so that was cross-cutting across the entire world. We had, people participating in bi-weekly meetings and giving presentations about things that they were trying with incomplete work that they wanted refined from the larger community from all over the globe, right? And so, but you have to find something that they're interested in cross-sharing with each other. You can't force it.
I would like to add one more thing here, and I know that Steve Milan, you wrote it that he said that value streams are the new silos. What I would like to focus on is what I call viable systems. There's this thing called viable systems theory, and behind that is the idea, if your value stream in this case would be able to function as an autonomous system, then it is complete. Otherwise, it's just a component of something else. And if it is just a component, of course, it has to be integrated, and something integrated should not act as a silo. But if it is a viable system, an economically feasible, sustainable unit of the organization, what is wrong when it is a silo? So even it's a question, which problem are we trying to solve?
Yeah, exactly. And I like, for those of you that were in that exchange, including Steve and Al and others, I think it is like Steve said, it is only problem when dependencies exist between silos, but they always, it's almost like they always exist. And the challenge is, how to minimize or at least be aware of those dependencies and get alignment on how to address those dependencies. I don't know, Steve, if you want to jump in, or we have about 5 more minutes. I don't think we can cover another question, but maybe we can elaborate a little bit more on this. Not to put you on the spot, Steve, but maybe to warm you up. You're up next, so.
Sure. We're taking a break before my session, right?
We are, yeah.
Yeah, but
I
love this topic. I think, right now, as most organizations exist, siloization is a huge problem because dependencies are everywhere, right? You've got very few organizations building platforms, making shared resources and systems accessible throughout the organization. So, of course, you're going to have silo problems. You can't carve out areas of your organization and think of them in isolation when they're not actually isolated, right? It's like if I wanted to quarantine and I didn't have adequate supplies and I had no way of getting supplies, I'm going to die, right? I'm going to run out of resources. I don't have access to what I need. If I have access to things like grocery delivery, takeout delivery, if I have water supply to my home, if I have all these things that I don't have to go and get, and I don't have to ask anybody else for or negotiate, if all of that's accessible to me, I can sustain myself indefinitely. That's what we need for value streams, is sustainable, autonomous workflows that have access to all the resources that they need to be successful. That means marketing, that means design systems, that means platforms of all different types. It means automated legal review. It means access to clear objectives, measurable goals, direction, hiring. There's all kinds of things that support autonomy. What you need is like a vending machine for all these things, where you could just take what you need and focus on what you require to deliver value to customers. And ideally, you shouldn't have to rely on all kinds of different areas of the organization to do that, because that's extremely distracting.
Others who wants to jump in? Maybe we get a time for a response on this, or to add to what Steve just said.
What Steve said's perfect.
Yeah. Just put a period on that.
I love that analogy, though. If I don't have what I need during quarantine, I'm going to die.
I would like to do a quick summary, like a 1-minute takeaway view, and then I'd like Michael and Bryan to tell me if they agree, because we're coming at it from different angles. But I think one of the things we're saying is you have to look at the whole, and the value stream gives you the ability to do that. That you want to get value quickly, and to do that, you focus on the delays between the steps, not the steps themselves. And that most tools don't give you that information, but you want a tool or some way of getting that information. That when you tie stakeholders to the product management, to the business, to the development side, to the support that's required, you can create alignment, because everybody has the same view as they're moving through. And I know I left something out, but those seem to be the big thing. So Michael, Bryan, did I say something wrong, or what would you add to that as a high level summary?
Yes.
No, I agree with, I'm sorry, go ahead, Mike.
Okay. First thing, I agree with it. And I would like to add that what the tools also cannot tell you is if the right people are collaborating. It only tells you who is collaborating.
Yes. Very nice. Very nice.
Yeah, and the other thing I would add is that there's to do this correctly, you have to have that high level view, but you also need to make sure that the details are happening correctly. You have to be broad, but you have to be deep, and you have to be both at the same time. And just to reiterate something else I said earlier, even if the tools show who's collaborating and the tools show that the right people are collaborating, they don't necessarily tell you things are going well. They just tell you when it's just like the trouble lights on your cars. All they do is tell you your engine's about to explode, but they don't tell you that your car is running well.
Yeah, you might. Teiji Ono said something like managing with numbers is that the bad managers don't understand numbers. The worst managers only understand numbers, and the tools they only give you the numbers.
Yeah.
All right. Well, thank you. This was really fun, and it's I don't know. At least I don't get an often chance. Or I wish I would have a chance to do this more often, just to have a discussion like this. This has been fun. So we're at the end of session 2. Session 3 will start in 15 minutes. So I'll explain it when we come back, but just to give you a little bit, for those of you that are not familiar with Zoom and breakout rooms. So for this session number 3, we have 2 sessions at the same time. So Steve and Rob. Steve's going to present in this main room. Rob's going to present in breakout room. And what you'll need to do is just, you'll see now breakout rooms icon down in the bottom. And you'll just choose one with Rob's name. There's only one other breakout room. So if you want to hear Rob, you can obviously go back between the sessions if you want. But if you want to hear from Rob, go to a breakout room with his name. If you want to hear from Steve, he's going to stay in this main room. You don't have to do that. Both sessions will be recorded. Again, it'll be up to the speakers to decide if they want to share. So far, nobody has said that they don't want me to post those, so I think we're good, but I'll still double check with everybody at the end. So let's take a 13-minute break, and then when we come back, we'll start with session 3. Thank you, Al. Thank you, Michael, and thank you, Bryan.
Yeah, thanks so much for the opportunity.
This is fun.